Welcome to the weekend special of the Federalist Files. On today's show, Israel and Hamas agree to a ceasefire, another political witch hunt of Donald Trump, the U.S. implementing globalism taxes, and finally, how the Biden economy robs lower and middle class citizens.
This is the honor system. The honor system as to whether somebody's been vaccinated. Do you want them breathing in your face on the strength of their honor? We have a responsibility to make sure that the House of the Representatives chamber is not a petri dish.
Hello, folks. Thank you for tuning in. As always, I'm here to inform you of this week's news on the weekend special. It's kind of a little bit of a slower news cycle. I covered a lot of the stuff during the week. I have this ceasefire over in Iran, but first I want to just confront. He had the mask policy in the House of Representatives, who is to be laid out by the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, telling everyone to still wear a mask, defying the orders now of the CDC. So this is something that I wanted to address the last episode. Is now what we're seeing is in the very beginning of this pandemic, so they call it, we had all these politicians coming out and saying, well, you can't defy the orders of the CDC. This is what the scientists say. And now they are defying the orders of the CDC. So now we cannot have it. It does not work both ways for the Democrat Party. It only works when they want to pound you into submission. And if you point to them and you say, well, you guys are defying the orders, it doesn't matter. Communists don't care about being hypocrites. It's actually almost like a bragging right for them to be able to manipulate society so much to a point where they can abide by completely different rules than everybody else. So for them, this is almost like a bragging point. This is a flex of power. So for those just listening and not watching, that is Nancy Pelosi saying that everybody needs to be wearing masks. And then shortly thereafter, she's talking to a bunch of other legislators without masks on. But while they're in the chamber of the House of Representatives, it is completely, necessary and imperative for them to be wearing these masks for God knows what reason. Everybody, by the way, has also been vaccinated. So Israel, Hamas, they had a ceasefire, 2 a.m., May 21st. So of the ceasefire, there's still apparently some issues in some religious spots within Israel. There's some protests, some infighting between Israelis and Arabs, apparently. So they say, according to reports. So now we've been having protests breaking out in the United States, assaults, attacks on Jews, which have been a little covered by the corporate media hacks. But first I want to go over this protest in Palestine. I'm sorry, it's a protest of Palestinians, or rather just Muslims, in, I think it's Great Britain. They go on to mention, I looked through, I tried to find the location, but the protesters are mentioning how they talk about Great Britain specifically, so I'm thinking that's where it's held. So play 5.
The reason why we are here, because we are Muslim. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. Those brothers in Philistine, they're our brothers. That's our blood. Our war is one. Our deen is one. Our Rasul is one. The solution, very simple. Jihad fi sabilillah. We have armies. We have tanks. We have soldiers. What are they waiting for? Oh, yeah, if this goes out to the Muslim armies, what are you waiting for? Jihad is responsibility on you. Wipe out that Zionist entity. How dare they occupy How dare they? How dare they? And you've got no honor in you. The Muslim youth here, we, the Muslims in the West, we are with you. We make dua for you. Make jihad fi sabilillah. Remove the Zionists. You have these armies and tanks. What for? Remove them, and we'll make dua for you, inshallah.
So this man, he yells about removing the Zionists and removing Israel and wipe them off the map, kill the Israelis. And that's him pretty much calling upon the troops, saying we have armies, we have militaries everywhere. Listen, folks, Israel has now been around as a Jewish state, I think, since 1948. It has created treaties with pretty much all the other countries around it, with the exception of the West Bank, the Palestinian Authority, and Iran. So they're pretty much amiable with everybody around them, surrounding them. So this is just this guy blowing it up. He thinks, I guess, that these other countries have a lot of power. He yells jihad. He thinks that, you know, all the Muslims are going to unite and they're going to attack and end Israel. And at the end of the day, the determining factor is you have Israel's a pretty powerful militarily, and then they're also much more unified. They're the first, if I actually sit here and think about that, I think they are the only democracy currently in the Middle East right now. So they're just, that's futile. That battle will be futile for them. But more importantly, it's just the idea, and this video continues to go on for almost 2 minutes, so I cut it a little bit short, and he goes on to explain the UN and how Great Britain's not going to do anything about that. And that actually, he kind of alludes somewhat to what Israel was before this. Israel was occupied Palestine by Great Britain. Palestine was never actually its own sovereign nation. It was held under British rule, and then the UN decided to get together. So we're talking about the United Nations, and make this a state for Jews, a Zionist state, as they would call it, for Jews in Israel. So there's been protests, like I said, with Palestinians. And they're calling for violence here in this video directly. Pretty much, they're talking about ending the state of Israel, which would include violence. To eradicate something would include, or to eradicate a country and Jews, that would imply violence. So the conversation, or I have this other clip, and this is in New York. It's in Manhattan. And it was explosives being thrown at Jews in Manhattan. Play 2. That's a shorter clip. I have that as well. And then there's one really bad one where people eating at a restaurant, I believe it's also in New York, they were confronted by pro-Palestinian protesters who were yelling at them, throwing bottles at them. So really just pro-Palestinian rioters that were throwing, and apparently the people that were throwing bottles at weren't even Jewish, but they were just yelling, calling them different curse words. That's why I can't even play the video, because there's so much cussing in it that it would just be all bleeps, and it would just be useless for the show. So what I have is this conversation, and this is to kind of entail how this fight's been going on, or how this fight was going on. I don't know how long this ceasefire is going to hold up. I think they had a ceasefire in 2014 as well. I think it only lasted a couple of days, and then they started launching missiles at each other once again. So at this point, it's been about 3,500 missiles that Hamas has shot at Israel. That's the count. And there's this conversation that I have of the IDF, which is the Israeli Defense Force, telling somebody in a building that is occupied by Hamas, but there are citizens and civilians in that building. He calls in the IDF officer and lets them know beforehand, hey, listen, in 2 hours we're going to attack this building because we know this is a command center for Hamas. We want to take out all of their forms of communication, or whatever type of military operations that they're doing at that location. We're looking to take it out. And I'm going to play the clip, and it'll be me in the background. I'll explain a little bit, because I'm going to translate for you to read out the subtitles for those that are listening and not watching. Play 8.
Palestinian, I can't get all the people out. I need at least 2 hours to get them out. Listen, we are going to bomb the building. Palestinian, you want to bomb whatever you want. Israeli, no, brother, we need to do everything we can so you don't die. Palestinian, we want to die. Israeli, but you have a responsibility for children's lives. Palestinian, if the children need to die, then they'll die. Israeli, God forbid, what do you want to die? This is how we reveal your cruelty, says the Palestinian to end.
Just to try to illustrate this and lay this out. So the Israeli Defense Forces is not indiscriminately attacking buildings like Hamas is. Hamas is launching indiscriminate missile fire into Israel. It is not, there is no homing device on this missile. They're just random fires. There's no specific coordinates. These are not aimed at military units. These are specifically indiscriminate. They are hitting civilians. They're hitting citizens over in Israel, innocent people, innocent casualties. So the answer from the IDF is we're going to have calculated strikes on locations where we know there are the enemy, Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. So the answer, and that is what they do. And I've mentioned this before, is Hamas does not care. They don't care if there's civilian casualties on their side, because they use humans as shields. They use the civilian population as a shield for them and for their operations. And here it is itself stating, well, we don't really care, because then you'll look bad in the media. We don't care how many of our own citizens, whether they're innocent or not, how many of them die. It doesn't matter to us, because this is all about optics, and this has always been about optics, because we know the media, or the Western media, the American media, is going to carry the water for us, and they're going to do everything they can to vilify the Israeli Defense Forces, which we have done this entire time throughout this. And we're going to see how this ends up playing out. I've been covering this pretty deeply, just because I think a lot of people really, with the exception of maybe Ben Shapiro, a lot of people are not covering it. And what you're getting from the talking heads on Fox News, I see Geraldo Rivera going out there defending Palestine, and this is what I've seen, this common theme in this argument of, oh, well, look how many people are dying in Palestine, or the West Bank, Gaza. Look how many people have died here, and then look at how many Israeli civilians died. So pretty much the argument is, if you are a weaker defense, if you are a weaker force militarily, and you're very inefficient, then you can shoot as many missiles you want at the opposing country. So if you are Hamas, you could shoot as many missiles as you want at Israel, because you know Israel is a better military force than you, and they're going to end up killing more of your civilians than you kill of their civilians. So you shooting those 3,600 missiles, by the way, I don't even know how many missiles Israel has shot, because I've yet to see, because it's not, they're nowhere near, and the media purposely will not report how many Israel shot. They rather would report casualties, because this is how they control the narrative. If they reported how many Israel actually shot, it would be minuscule in comparison to how many Hamas shot indiscriminately into civilian territory in Israel. So really the argument, and I've heard this argument from people that are even on the middle conservative side, because they've also been tricked by the legacy media class to think, oh, well, Israel's defense system is so good and they can take out the West Bank Gaza Strip if they wanted to. That's the argument. And I go, okay, so I don't understand what the point is. If Israel were to put down their weapons, they would be destroyed. Whereas if Hamas and the Palestinian Authority was to do the same thing and capitulate, there would be peace in that region. That's the difference between the two. The aggressor has always been the West Bank Gaza Strip, especially within the last 20 years. It has always been Hamas and the Palestinian Authority every single time. They're the ones that always spark this fight every time. It's consistently, historically, that is the way it has gone over at least the last 20 years. And this weird argument that, and I always put in the perspective of let's compare it to America. So if I'm living in, and there was this great video of I can't remember the comedian's name, Joan Rivers, I think her name was Joan Rivers. She's a comedian. She recently passed away. And she was saying something like, if New Jersey was attacking New York, we would nuke New Jersey and take them out completely, which she's right. So in America, the way that we fight wars, if somebody started shooting missiles at us, especially from a range like that close, let's say on the northern border, Canada's shooting missiles at us, we would answer with much more force. We would eradicate the target, which is Israel's actually probably handling it. I think Israel's handling it better than the United States would actually handle it, to be honest with you. So next, what I got, another Trump witch hunt, and this one is very, very troubling indeed, and this will continue to be in the news because it seems like to keep all of, and I think the title of this one's going to be, the media just isn't covering the Biden administration purposely. They're bringing up stories about Trump. They're talking about this January 6th commission, and the reason that they're doing so is because they legitimately know that it's been such a bad administration that they will do anything to take the blame off of Biden, and they want to make the story about Trump because they are also tanking in their ratings as well. They need Trump. They need Trump to be the president because they don't know how to cover the Biden administration. It's easy for Fox News, it's easy for the conservatives to cover Trump because there's good, there's bad. But there is some overwhelming goods in the past administration. Tax cuts, deregulation. The only part that really was truly the worst part about the Trump administration is everything was done executively, so then it was rolled back when the next president came in, which was a serious problem and a serious concern. But here what we have is the media is not going to cover anything that Biden does wrong, so instead they're going to shift the story and they're going to shift the narrative somehow still to Donald Trump, who's no longer even the president, and they're going to they're talking about, like I said, that January 6th commission. So I want to first get to this Trump story, and then I'll go on to actually play some video in the Capitol building that day. So what I do have, though, is I have Letitia James. Letitia James is going to be the prosecutor going after Trump. At first, this was a civil case, and now they're informing the Trump team, you would call them, that this is no longer going to be a civil case and this is moving over to a criminal case. So just hear what Letitia James, what she ran on while she was running as a prosecutor. Just remind you all, she is George Soros backed. She was funded by George Soros to get elected in the state of New York. Play 9.
To focus on Donald Trump and his abuses. We need to follow his money. We need to find out where he's laundered money. All of those transactions have happened here in New York City. Tell this president and every other individual that no one is above the law.
Again, going after Donald Trump, this illegitimate government president of the United States, individuals who care that he has colluded and that he's violated the emoluments clause, and that basically all that he stands for is in violation of our values and who we are as a people and as a society.
Running for Attorney General because I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president when our fundamental rights are at stake. A legal system where even the most powerful in the country cannot use a loophole to evade justice. We must do our job to ensure that the man currently occupying the Oval Office is held accountable to any and everything he has done.
This lady pretty much has run to become the Attorney General in New York. She ran strictly on a anti-Trump campaign. So she's been going after Trump from day one. She's been trying to find ways to release his IRS records, release his tax records, even while he was running for president. She's also been known for going after the NRA, so the NRA could not donate to the Republican campaigns in the past election. So she's pretty much a Democrat activist, which we really get into some serious problems now when we have the Attorney General, the AG positions that are really not supposed to be political, when we have them politicized to this extent. So after learning of this, Trump comes out with a statement. It's a couple pages long, but I just took a smaller excerpt from it. So he states, and I quote, "I have just learned through leaks in the mainstream media that after being under investigation from the time I came down the escalator 5.5 years ago, including the fake Russia hoax, the 2-year, $48 million, no collusion Mueller witch hunt, impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, and others, that the Democrat New York Attorney General has informed my organization that their investigation is no longer just a civil matter, but also potentially a criminal investigation working with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. There is nothing more corrupt than an investigation that is in desperate search of a crime, but make no mistake, that is exactly what is happening here." So that's his first thing. So let me just break that down. When he says at the very end, now the way that the law enforcement system is supposed to work is you find the crime, you investigate the crime, and then you find the person that committed the crime through the investigation of the crime. The way in which she is enforcing law right now is you find the person who is Donald Trump, my political enemy, the political enemy of the left wing, that we want to make an example out of because he's not from the establishment. We take Donald Trump and we investigate him and we try to find a crime. That is an illegitimate way of the process. That is a dereliction of the Constitution. There is nothing in the Constitution supporting that the government at any time can just select a person and investigate them based on nothing. No criminal activity. You would need a warrant, and in order to get that warrant, you need some sort of probable cause that a crime was committed. So next he's going to go on. The Attorney General of New York literally campaigned on prosecuting Donald Trump even before she knew anything about me. She said that if elected, she would use her office to look into every aspect of my real estate dealings. She swore that she would definitely sue me. She boasted on video that she would be, and I quote, a real pain in the ass. She declared, just wait until I'm in the Attorney General's office. And, she said, I've got my eyes on Trump Tower. She also promised that if elected, she would, and I quote, join with law enforcement and other attorney generals across the nation in removing this president from office, end quote. And she stated next, and I quote, it's important that everyone understand that the days of Donald Trump are coming to an end. So we have somebody that has been so far politicized, once again, backed by George Soros. I think he gave her, I want to say something like 70 million. Maybe I'm overshooting it. Maybe it's more like 7 million to her campaign while she was running as Attorney General. So it goes on. The Attorney General made each of these statements not after having had an opportunity to actually look at the facts, but before she was even elected, before she had even seen a shred of evidence. This is something that happens in failed third world countries, not the United States. If you can run for a prosecutor's office pledging to take out your enemies and be elected to that job by partisan voters who wish to enact political retribution, then we are no longer a free constitutional democracy. So he is 100% correct on this. This is no longer a free country. This is a third world republic, or what they would like to call a banana republic. This is a third world country. Prosecuting political enemies for the sheer reason of being your political enemy is not due process. It is directly in violation of the Constitution, which the left likes to wipe their butt with. They don't take it seriously, obviously, the Constitution. We're getting more and more like this communist, like totalitarian regime where you are punished for going against the grain. You are punished for going against the establishment that has been in power for such a long time, such a long duration. And that is what Donald Trump did. And they're using this now as a period of retribution, as a punitive measure. It sends the message to everybody in this country, oh, if you're going to run from outside the establishment and you think you're going to become president and you're going to do things that are going to better the country, you're going to lower taxes, you're going to make people's lives easier, you're going to give them more freedom, you're going to protect liberty and freedom, you will be prosecuted afterwards for retribution, as they call it. Trump has really, this idea of Trump derangement syndrome, actually, I never really believed it was a real thing until I started getting on social media, and then I realized there are a lot of people that are absolutely deranged. They are mentally damaged from this Trump presidency. They are very vocal when Trump was the president, but Trump is now no longer the president, and there's a lot of negative things that are going on in the current administration, such as, I just saw a report that just recently, literally like just on my phone saw it, 30,000, I think it was either 30 or 60,000 they're reporting now at the border thus far this year have crossed illegally, which is astronomical numbers comparatively to the last administration. So there's a lot of things, there's a lot of negative aspects of this current administration, talking about taxes. As you can see right now, the market's not looking so good. Inflation is on the rise. These are statistics that are actually managed by the government, so it's not like I'm sitting here shooting conjecture out at you. I've come out with many different studies, the U.S. Labor and Statistics, the jobs report that just recently came out. We have a lot of a lot of negative economic ramifications from the current administration right now. A lot of these social policies, a lot of these social programs are the root cause of this, and that has been pushed through this administration at this point. But there is a cognitive dissonance from the left wing in our politics where they no longer pay attention to who the president is as long as it is the person that they like, and they will not, they will do anything to justify the actions from the administration because their person that they like so much is in. Now, I wasn't a big fan of some of this reform that Trump came through with, the banning of chokeholds through an executive order. I didn't like that. I also did not like whatever crime bill he had. It wasn't a crime bill, but it was the First Step Act. I wasn't a fan of that either. There's a lot of things with with the Trump administration, I was not a fan of him doing, and I was openly vocal about it. I wasn't vocal here because I didn't have a podcast at the time. But there was a lot of things he did, such as some of the trade wars that he had, I wasn't a big fan of as well. Because hitting these other countries with tariffs as their things come in, as their goods and commodities come in, what they do is they just raise the price to make up for the tax, and then we end up actually paying the tariff more than anybody else in other countries. So, like I said, they do not live in a realistic society. They are living in a cognitive dissonance, and the media is purposely kind of shifting the narrative on everybody. So now the narrative is going to shift to Donald Trump. He's getting investigated for criminal charges. Oh my God, the left is gonna, they're gonna cheer. And they'll never be satiated by the blood that's spilled by their political enemies. By the way, this will never end. This will just continue. If they're able to get away with locking up Donald Trump for some total stupid whatever criminal reason they want to pin on him, if they're able to do this, all of this just to begin with works as a deterrent, so people know in the future there's no point in running for office, because look what happened to Donald Trump. And I was calling this during the administration. I was talking to my father about it. I said, watch, if he does not win this next election, or even after, if he wins this next election, they're going to attempt to prosecute him and put him in prison because he did so much against what they're for. They're all about globalism. And you could say that about the establishment. You could say that about the Democrats as well. The establishment Republicans too. They're about globalism around the country, holding world power. They're not really, and then they're also additionally about letting these councils like the UN make policy in the United States. They're not about representing you, the people. They're about their own narcissistic, whatever their self-aggrandizement is at this time, whatever their personal avarice motivates them to do. That is what they're enticed to do. That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in helping you, the citizen that you think, you are free in this system. They're not here to help you. They're here to only help themselves. So when there was a person in there that wasn't all about themselves all the time, even though, Trump loved to talk about his numbers and loved to talk about this and that, and, how many people he had come out to events. There was a lot of job numbers. There was a lot of, I think that Trump, this is the way I look at it here. Trump was selfish in the way where he wanted to make himself look good because he already had all the other things, whereas you have these politicians that all they care about is getting themselves rich. Trump was already rich, so he didn't care about that. He wanted to be liked, to be accepted amongst the population. So the only way he could see himself doing that is to govern effectively. This is actually kind of how the system is supposed to work. Whereas now the way that it works is you have people wanting to get rich off the system, and they're doing whatever they can to enrich themselves and their families, whereas Trump was already in the position, and he was doing it to, yes, enrich himself, but in a different way. That is just my personal conjecture, my personal opinion that I'm throwing in there. So like I said, these left-wingers, they do not live in reality. So I have this next story, or you know what, actually, this election, this January 6th commission that they're attempting to make, now there has been a video that has actually come out, and I'm going to play it in a second. You have the Capitol Police telling the January 6th rioters while they're in the Capitol building, you guys can be here, it's not a problem as long as you guys cooperate with law enforcement. So now we're kind of muddying the waters. Things are getting a little dicey. We're not really aware exactly what happened on this day, considering these people were now told that they could be in the building as long as they were friendly. Play 2.
The police here are willing to work with us and cooperate peacefully, like our First Amendment allows. Gather more Americans under the condition that they will come and gather peacefully to discuss what needs to be done to save our country. We're going to be heard. Everybody, this must be peaceful.
This has to be peaceful. We have the right to peacefully assemble.
Well, nonetheless, that's definitely an interesting group of people in the January 6th riot on the Capitol. But yeah, you could see from the horse's mouth directly from the Capitol Police officer saying, as long as everybody's peaceful in here, we shouldn't have any problems. Everyone's allowed to peaceably assemble in here. Yeah, and the people are told one thing, the media covers it a completely different way. This is a video that you've probably not even seen, because the media suppresses the story. They don't want anyone to know about this because then it's kind of controversial. It becomes objecting to what their narrative is. And to go on with this idea of, the left wing just being, their perception of reality is so distorted, and that is why I think a lot of them do have these mental disorders. I have Demi Lovato. She's not living in the real world herself. I have a daily caller piece. I'm not really going to go into the article. I'll just specifically go over to her tweet. She's going to switch herself over. Apparently, she's non-binary now. She has known she's flip-flopped on this. I think she was straight, then she was gay, then she was bisexual, and then after that, she switched over to, I think she wanted to be considered queer, or gender fluid, or something like that. Now she's changing to non-binary. So, she stated this was May 19th, 2021 on her tweet. Today is a day I'm so happy to share more of my life with you all. I am proud to let you know that I identify as non-binary and will officially be changing my pronouns to they, them moving forward. This has come after a lot of healing and self-reflective work. I'm still learning and coming into myself, and I don't claim to be an expert or a spokesperson. Sharing this with you now opens another level of vulnerability for me. So, I think Demi Lovato is a severely damaged person. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in just a fair and clear, concise way to put it. I think she has some mental problems for sure. I know she's had some drug addiction issues in the past. She has, I think she's relapsed on heroin a couple of times now. I think she almost killed herself at one point. She OD'd so hard. She has a lot of problems. I think this is always, whenever she kind of comes out with one of these ideas, I think a lot of times kind of a cry for help. It's for attention. She doesn't really get it, I think, much. And she's all over the place. She's definitely mentally, she has a mental disorder. There's no doubt in me saying that. And I'm not a scientist, but I would diagnose, if I had to guess, just from her history of drug abuse, or history of changing so many times, being, dealing with, I think she has manic depressive disorder. She has a lot of issues. That's all I know. And you see this amongst the younger celebrities. I think part of the reason is that they get such a endorphin rush when they're younger. When they're a celebrity, they're on TV, they're so famous, people are freaking out, they're crying when they see them. They get such a endorphin rush, and this was what exact same thing happened to Justin Bieber. The amount of endorphins that you get rushed into your system almost burn out your neurotransmitters in your brain to a point where you have problems in the future when you become an adult producing those same endorphins to get that same high, that same good feeling. And because you have that lack of endorphins, all of your levels are totally off. And I think that could be part of the reason. It seems like all of these really young pop star celebrities, when they get older, they have a lot of issues. Now, Justin Bieber, I think, has cleaned himself up a lot since he's gotten married. I think he's like a super religious guy now. But I just hope that Demi Lovato honestly finds the best way to rectify all the problems that she has. It's a total mess for her. So Russian and speaking, and this speaks to the wider issue in American society, that she has this problem, and I blame, obviously, maybe upbringing, maybe she was born this way, I'm not exactly sure, but I also blame our society for not rejecting things like this. We're telling people that they are things that are not real, and these are irrational occurrences. This isn't real. You know how there's, when you took math, there was irrational numbers and rational numbers. This is something that's irrational. It's not real. You can't consider yourself they, them. There's no, we're not changing the English language, because the English language behind it, those quote unquote pronouns, they have an actual meaning behind them. So they don't, there is no meaning now when you change the word they, them. You're making everybody abide by different rules in the English language just because it makes you feel more comfortable. So you're making everybody else change their lives around to make you feel more comfortable. What the meaning of they, them now is something totally different. So what Demi Lovato wants us to refer to her as, instead of saying she, her, what have you, what she wants us to refer to her as is they. So they, when referring to Demi, or just saying Demi Lovato in her full name, Demi Lovato, or saying they don't like this or they don't like that. And when you think of they, you think of a large group of people. So yeah, we're just getting to this point where language is changing, and when you change the language, you can kind of change the foundation and the fundamentals of society, and that's what the left wing is attempting to do, and that's why they kind of just play along with this whole guessing game where no one knows what they are, everything's so fluid. It's this cultural relativism where you're not able to judge anything, and nothing really matters, and there's just no rules at all. So this kind of plays off this. Recently, the U.S. military has been coming out with all these recruiting videos. You had the CIA with the wokeness, with this gay guy that was looking through books. He works in a library. I want to say the Army had something like that as well. Or this I think is the Army, or this is the Marines. I don't remember which one it is. I think it might be the Army. Yeah, I think it's the Army. So what we have is, I'm going to play a short clip. The Russian military, they're speaking in Russian the entire time, or whatever the language is over there. And then shortly thereafter, I'm going to have the U.S. military recruiting clip. So check this out, play 6.
Твоей новой жизни. Что ты знаешь о себе? На что ты способен? Вопросы могут остаться без ответов, но разве ты сможешь познать себя, познать границы своих возможностей? К черту границы, а без боя нет победы. Но на самом деле, главный враг – это задача выследить врага, догнать его, превзойти, стать лучше, чем он.
It begins in California, with a little girl raised by 2 moms. I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. To marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength. I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my call.
So in the Russian military, they extol alpha male characteristics, whereas in the United States military, the only thing we care about right now is not being effective, not being the most deadly fighting force in the world, which is the most important thing in a military. That is the one objective, is to be the most deadliest force out there. Their objective now is to have this diversity, and what's the most important probably of this, they've been showing their diversity more than anything, not whether or not the force, if you're telling me the force has to be homogeneously all men, but it's the most effective that way. It all comes down to what is the most effective fighting force that we can have out there. If it is all men, then that's the way it should be. If it's all women, then that's the way it should be, which I'm sure it's not all women. It's probably all men. Just because genetically, biologically. At the very end, I think the most interesting part about this is the way in which America, kind of the narrative here, the way we emphasize, she says at the very end, I found my calling. She doesn't say anything. Notice how she doesn't really say anything about serving her country or being selfless and defending the country. It's, if you're looking for a career, then you can find your calling here at the U.S. military. And that's really just that's not the point of our military. Our military isn't to find your calling and find your inner self, where you have to evaluate yourself. That's something you do in college if you want. That's some sort of stupid thing that people say, and it's just not real. It sounds like it's nuanced, but it's just not realistic, saying, I'm trying to find myself, I'm going through my truth right now. That is something that the liberals say. I've actually had conversations, I've had debates with people online, and they've said, and it's people that I know from high school, they'll say, I'm just speaking my truth. But that, to me, sounds subjective. Is it the truth? What do you mean by my truth? Oh, so it's your opinion that you call your own truth. That's not the truth, though. So once again, they use these irrational terms that have just really no semblance. They don't make any. They're nonsensical. They're impractical. So the U.S., and I'm going to get to now. I have all this statistical stuff, a lot of the economy, some troubling stuff about how our country is attempting to make a global taxation on corporations. So this is a story from CNBC. Jeff Cox. I can't even believe that I haven't heard anybody cover this story. To me, I think that this screams globalism. This also screams interventionism as well, and really oppressiveness just from a regime. If you think about America and their military force, the force that America's economy has to really control all economics across the board, generally the global currency is the U.S. dollar. So we already have so much power in that regard, and now we're going to go forward with this idea of a global corporate tax. So the United States, there is no sovereignty. If you're another nation, the United States will make your tax law for you, which to me I think is so authoritarian. It is so imperialistic, like from the old world, something that would have been happening, during British rule. That's the way that I look at this. I can't even believe that they're considering this as a policy. They're somehow going to get together in the United States government and they're going to make law internationally what other people's tax rates should be. It is outrageous to me. And it screams, authoritarian, imperialist mindset. I can't even believe that this is real. So corporations around the world should pay at least a 15% tax on their earnings, the Treasury Department said Thursday as part of its push for a global minimum for businesses. The final rate could go even higher than that, according to a Treasury release that said the 15% minimum is a, and I quote, floor, and that discussions should continue to be ambitious and push that rate higher. U.S.-based companies currently pay a 21% tax rate, a level that was slashed during the Trump administration. It was previously 35%. Under a proposal from Joe Biden, the tax rate would hike up to 28%. With raise of levies on both companies and the highest earners. So whoever the CEO is or what have you. I can't even. So our government's looking to push a minimum corporate tax of 15%. Not here, not in the United States. So once again, United States officials, and we're not even talking about elected officials, we're talking about the Treasury. United States bureaucrats are looking to push policy all over, and they say even it's a global. So now it used to be when Alex Jones was doing his whole globalism thing, when he was talking about globalism, what the Koch brothers, this, that, the other thing. Everyone was making fun of him. They were all mocking this guy. He ends up turning out to be right. This is what they're going for. They're going for a globalized corporate tax rate, admittedly so using the word global as well. It's amazing to me. It's astonishing. So Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has been touting the benefits of a global corporate minimum tax rate that she said would discourage companies from relocating domiciles to other countries to cut their tax burdens, even though most of their operations are in the U.S. Yellen's Treasury believes, and I quote, I'm quoting here, that the international tax architecture must be stabilized, that the global playing field must be fair, and that we must create an environment in which countries work together to maintain our tax basis and ensure the global tax system is equitable and equipped to meet the needs for the 21st century global economy, the department said in a news release. Yellen has bemoaned a global race to the bottom among countries cutting their rates to try to lure for foreign companies. So now what the United States is really trying to do here, and this is they hide it behind the guise of an equitable society. This isn't an equitable society. So you're telling countries, to begin with, other countries already have problems. These third world countries have problems struggling with making goods and enriching their people. They already have that problem to begin with. What you want to do is you want to increase the tax rate because you said so in the United States to make their people in these third world countries more destitute and not able to afford goods the same way. What the United States wants to do is they want to raise these tax rates in these other countries so that those other countries can never get themselves out of poverty. So jobs will come back to the United States. They won't outsource jobs to these other countries. And we won't have the most affordable way of making something. We will not keep goods at a low rate in doing this. We're going to keep goods at a higher rate. The higher the tax rate is, if you have to employ workers from in the United States, it's just going to, whatever the price of the good is going to be, it's going to be more expensive. Especially if that commodity, or if they raise the minimum wage, then that automatically will make that commodity even higher, and then it'll actually give you less access to products, because if products aren't if you make a product and there's no profit from making the product, then there's no point in making the product. That's just the way the market works. So let's say in the United States you made pencils, you had to pay the workers this much. Each pencil individually would be $5. That's a job that gets outsourced over to Argentina. Argentina makes the pencils very cheaply to make each pencil only $1. What the United States wants to do is now they want to have a corporate tax over in Argentina. Now, well, guess what? Argentina has to jack their price up to $5 as well, and then they have to ship those jobs back to the United States to make Argentina destitute. That's what the United States government wants to do. The United States government wants to enrich, I guess, and attempt to really what they don't want to do. They don't want to enrich the people here. They want to enrich the government here. This is all a grab for more power and more taxable income. That is the only reason they're going forward with this. They want to take all those jobs, all the money that's being made in other countries. They want to bring it back here, but they don't want to bring it back here for you, the worker, so you can make more money. They want to also jack up the corporate tax rate here and the individual income tax rate here so they can take the money out of your hands too. So it's not like they're trying to bring jobs back to the United States. Yeah, okay, maybe they'll bring some jobs back to the United States, but then they're going to take your money from you anyway, so it doesn't even really matter. You're better off just shipping those jobs out at this point. And really, they want a system that's rigged. They want a rigged game. They know they do a terrible job of governance in the United States government. So instead of allowing free markets throughout the world, the best free market wins. The most efficient government wins. With the exception, there's some natural resources that just happen to be particular to certain areas, such as oil. Some people just have more natural resources than others. Some countries have better depositories of that. But what they want to do is they want to rig the game so the United States automatically wins. And all the other countries. This is what globalism was all about. They want to control everyone all around the world, and they want to rig the game so they can jack up their tax prices as much as they want in the United States, and they can screw you all out of your money. That's the reason for this. This is all just another push for power. This is a push for more money coming into the government's hands. This has nothing to do with bringing jobs back to the United States. They don't want to actually have to be competitive, because then if this is set in standard, they don't have to actually do their job as government representatives. They don't need to keep the tax rates low. They don't have to be efficient with their taxpayer dollars. This makes their job so much easier, and it takes their power and it enriches it more, and it builds up their power in the federal government. So what I've heard is, once again, I always hear this same thing where the rich don't pay their fair share, and that was a little bit in this article as well. I just have this Heritage Foundation chart. Okay, so what this chart actually says, I have this chart from the Heritage Foundation. IRS is the source in 2016. So the share of the income earned in this country, what you have is about 36% from the top 10% in this country, right? They own about, the top 10% own 36% at this time, 36% of all the income earned, right? But their share of the tax rate is much higher than that. The amount of taxes they actually pay in this country is, what's it say here, 37 plus 21% plus 11. That's just the top 10%. So 37, 21, 58, and so 69. It's around 70%. So you have the top 10% paying 70% of the tax burden, according to this chart. And this chart is directly sourced by the IRS. So there's this common theme where the left always makes it like, oh, well, the corporations, the people that make money don't pay enough. Really, the people that make the money that they claim don't pay enough, they pay a huge amount of you have 10% of the people paying 70% of the taxes in this country. So Biden's inflation tax, and this is another tax, all these taxes, all these negative aspects on the economy, they have a large impact on everybody, but they have the biggest impact on the middle class and the lower class in this country. So I have this piece from Real Clear Politics. It's written by Alfredo Ortiz. So he kind of explains this, and he explains it very well. And I've said this is almost like closet taxation with this new inflation rate that we're seeing. We're seeing the consumer price index rising every single month. The last month, I think it was 0.6%, which is huge to rise like that in just 1 month. So he states, consumer prices have increased at an accelerated rate every month this year. In April, core inflation rose at its fastest month-over-month pace since 1981. The producer price index grew by the largest amount on record last month. Commodity prices are skyrocketing, with corn rising by more than 50% this year, lumber elevating to 4 times its traditional rate, and copper hitting a record high. So we're looking at everything rise right now. Corn, which I think is very interesting, is up 50% this year. And corn's used in a lot of our products, i.e. High fructose corn syrup. It's genetically modified to be used in many of our products, which will raise the price of all of our food in a general sense. So average gasoline prices nationwide have risen by about 40% since Biden was elected, exceeding $3 a gallon nationwide, and this is partially because of the opposition to the Keystone XL pipeline, as well as some of the fracking, the stopping of fracking in certain areas. So as these input prices filter down, the consumer goods price will rise even further, which I remember mentioning this. As gas goes up, how is it that you get one commodity or one consumer product from one place to another? How do you get it there? Through transportation. How's that transportation run? It's most likely derived the power source from oil, which then in essence brings up the price of everything as the price of oil goes up. So inflation acts the same way as a tax by reducing the value of earnings. And this is the point. When you continue to lower the Fed rates, you cause more inflation. More people are taking money out at a lower interest rate, so they don't have to create as much value to pay that money back. Now, if you have an interest rate that, let's say, is just 20%, which is crazy high, right? You have a 20% interest rate, and it's a $100,000 loan, so it's let's just make it clear, it's $120,000. You then have to come up with that extra $20,000, of value to pay that off. If you have a very low interest rate, if it's 0.1%, or let's just say 1% to make it simpler, you take $100,000 out, you only owe $101,000, right? You only have to really produce $1,000 worth of value, which then in essence means that you create more inflation because there's less value that you have to produce, but you're still pulling this money out. They're still printing the money out, but you're producing less value to match the money that you're pulling out. So all money that gets created or gets printed needs to be matched by an asset in the market. If the market, is comprised of, let's say, 100 cars, and in fluctuation in the economy, you only have $100. That means each car is going to be $1. If you decide to print more money out, if you print out another $100 and there's no assets to match it in the market to give value to those dollars, then those dollars now, if you have $200 and you still only have 100 cars, then now each car is worth $2. So that's how inflation goes up. It is printing more money with no value added into the economy, and that's how our inflation rates currently are now going up. It's a natural pricing mechanism, really, to try to match whatever products are in the market. So he's going to go on to talk about inflation a little bit and how this now becomes robbing the middle and the lower class citizens, because now your bank account is worth less the more money they print out. If there's no value to match it, that means that your money has less value because they're printing more money. So he states inflation acts the same way as a tax by reducing the value of earnings. It devastates retirees and those on fixed incomes by making them poorer through no fault of their own, and it hurts small businesses, which must constantly raise prices, reduce sales, and alienating customers. Biden's historically aggressive fiscal and monetary policies are largely responsible for these developments. So just to simply say it, it's harder when you're a smaller business to work on these margins. When you're a bigger business, you can usually get away with it. As a smaller entity, it is much more difficult to work on these margins when you're getting inflation. And it'll get to a point where, I don't know if that'll ever happen in this country, but in Venezuela it was, you were getting, or even in some of these, this is why a lot of these other countries, these third world countries, like to use Bitcoin, because there's so much inflation in their economy that you can get your paycheck on a Friday, and then the next Friday after that, your money's worth way less in value. Let's say you lose 30% of value in your money in 1 week. That's how bad the inflation is in some of these third world nations. So he goes on, and the reason for this is really the extended federal unemployment benefits they pay, and I think this is crazy significant numbers. They pay nearly half of recipients more to stay home than to return to work, which is the reason why we have this problem to begin with. We have people getting paid more to stay at home than to go to work. So as a result, the country is experiencing its biggest labor shortage in at least a generation. The Labor Department revealed last week that there are 8.1 million unfilled jobs nationwide. So as Milton Friedman, great economist, once said, inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. So pretty much just saying it's going, he goes, as long as you have some sort of entity controlling it, then inflation is going to be going on. So Biden has already passed an unnecessary $2 trillion rescue plan and proposed a $4 trillion in addition social welfare spending that would amount to the biggest expansion of American government since the 1960s. The Fed is monetizing this debt, dramatically increasing the money supply. Each dollar it prints is weaker than the last, requiring Americans to use more to purchase the same goods. So your money now does not go as far as it did before because of this. It's pretty simple to... It's actually, when you think about it, it's very difficult, but then when you explain it out in the way that I did with the products and having the money that has to match whatever assets are in the market, then it's much simpler to comprehend. So I have this next article. This is just a little bit about how red state governance is just much better, much more efficient than blue states. This is a Bongino piece written by Matt Palumbo. It's how red states have the best return on investment for taxpayers. It's a new study from Wallet Hub compared the states on one criteria: taxpayers' return on investment. The metric is calculated by comparing taxes paid per capita to the quality of government services the system provides, including things like infrastructure, crime, schools, water quality, hospital systems, and the percent of residents in poverty. And to little surprise, red states are ranked the best on average. So what you have here is a chart. As you can see, from 1 to 10, number 1 being New Hampshire. New Hampshire is kind of blue in their governor's blue, and then the state legislature is red, so it's not really a completely blue state. So it's kind of like a mix of the two. They're number 1. They're saying their government services are not a 9, and then their taxes paid per capita is only a 2, so it's very low. And then you have number 2 is Florida. They're number 1 in that. Taxes paid per capita. So number 1, you got New Hampshire, Florida, then you got South Dakota, Virginia, Missouri, Ohio, Texas, Georgia, Nebraska, Tennessee. So of those 10, you have Virginia. I think Virginia's state legislature might also be red. But of those 10, you have 2 that are kind of mixed, and then all the other ones are straight red across the board. And then he also said that Matt Palumbo said that this piece, it's a little bit off this study because then it also includes the values of, they do this weird poverty ranking, and they rank the poverty on low cost of living or how much money nominal rates for the amount of money that you have, but low cost of living in some of these red areas makes $7.25, which you would consider the minimum wage federally, go a lot further than it would go in a place like New Jersey, where your money, if you were making minimum wage at $7.25, it'd be very difficult to survive in this state because everything else is so expensive, all the products, as well as if you want to rent. Any type of real estate mortgage would be very expensive in New Jersey, just because alone on the tax rates kill you, and because the tax rates are so high. Additionally, it's difficult to get permits. It's difficult to do any work in New Jersey. The government taxes you so much that no one wants to build here, and then that also raises the price of the real estate market here as well. It's almost like in the stock market when they say, oh, there was a short squeeze. That's kind of what has happened here. The government has impeded on people so much, and they've been so infringing that everything is just shot up and skyrocketed up in price, and no one really knows how to bring it down. And the answer is to just lift all the restrictions and let people build in these areas, and then you shouldn't have a problem, and lower the property tax rates and the welfare state. So a couple quick headlines. California to raise tax on ammo and firearms, an extra 10% on top of whatever their sales tax already is, which is crazy money. So you're going to be paying almost like 20% in California if you want ammo and firearms. That's what they're trying to do currently. They've yet to do it. They have it in their state legislature. This is just another way to deter people from owning firearms because, oh my God, it's expensive. They tried to do this exact same thing in New Jersey. Murphy was talking about it, if you want your firearms ID card. In New Jersey, it costs, I think, $5, and then a pistol permit costs $2. He wanted to raise that price to something like $500 and $200. This is all just an attempt to deter people not to be able to, law-abiding citizens, might I add, to not be able to buy firearms and protect themselves and their family because they want all the power to be in the state rather than in the individual. You can't have two at the same time. You cannot have a powerful state government or a powerful government and also have a powerful individual. It's one or the other, really. So the IRS wants to force reporting transfers over $10,000 in crypto. So we've seen the crypto market this past week. This is an Epic Times piece. We've seen the crypto market this past week take a hard crash. It was going up very strongly, very hard comparatively to the stock market, which has been pretty stagnant these last couple of weeks. And the government is trying to figure out a way that they can tax this now. That's their big thing. So when this news came out, this also caused the market to go down. The other thing that caused the market to go down was you saw China coming out there and saying outlawing Bitcoin, outlawing cryptocurrency, which they've done a million times. They've said it every single year for the last 5 or 6 years now. You still have people that are in China that are figuring out how to get past that from the government. They're still buying it. I'm sure that the Chinese government actually probably is buying it, and they're just making sure their people aren't buying it because they don't want their people to have any power. But yeah, there was a crash. What really happened is there was consolidation compared with a short squeeze, or not a short squeeze, a liquidation, because you have a bunch of people playing insane leverage. If you want to talk about crypto, it's a completely different game where people are playing leverage to almost 100 times. So if you get below a certain point where you no longer can cover your leverage and you don't have any, you don't have anything to cover your losses, and your account instantly gets sold out off and you get liquidated, and that's what happened this past week. It's since then kind of slowly been teetering its way back up since the hard loss. I mean, it was almost like a 50% loss in the crypto market. So it's a highly volatile game, pays big rewards if you continue to hold and you don't go crazy selling and moving your money all over the place. So Biden releasing 9/11 conspirator and bin Laden bodyguard from Guantanamo Bay. This is a Daily Mail article. I don't really know why he's doing this. He was talking about shutting down Guantanamo Bay in its entirety, which the Obama administration was also attempting to do. Trump shut that down. He's like, listen, we're not doing that. We're going to keep Guantanamo. But it looks like this administration is kind of pushing Guantanamo Bay out. So Tulsi Gabbard, and this is... to me, this is great. This is a great story. Tulsi Gabbard condemns anti-white racism. And this is her specifically talking about Mayor Lightfoot. Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago said that she would only give interviews to black reporters or Hispanic, people of color supporters. So she tweeted, Mayor Lightfoot's blatant anti-white racism is abhorrent. I call upon President Biden, Kamala Harris, and other leaders of our country of all races to join me in calling for Mayor Lightfoot's resignation. Our leaders must condemn all racism, including anti-white racism. So you've yet to see a Republican come out with a strong condemnation of Mayor Lightfoot. You have Tulsi Gabbard, who's no longer really, I mean, she's in politics, but she's no longer in politics. She doesn't work in the government anymore, no longer in a political position. And she's the one condemning them. So it really shows that there is no huevos on the side of the Republican Party, that they're just establishment hacks and they kind of just hold their position. They're the occupying losers, really. They're there to occupy, hold the position, and then lose, and then kind of lose with a little bit of class so they don't get ripped too hard and thrown in prison by the regime like they want to do to Trump. It's just to be, Mitt Romney was always a good loser, really. That's what they want you to be. In the Republican Party, the establishment. So another story, leader of Boko Haram dead. Boko Haram is a terrorist organization, an Islamic terrorist organization in Nigeria, in Africa as well. They're very prominent there. You had a story a couple of years ago where Boko Haram locked down a school, a girls' school, and was holding hostages for so many days. So apparently he's passed away, which is a good thing. I don't know if he's passed away or if he's been killed, but it's been confirmed by multiple sources. So the very last story I have. Libs freak out over Roe v. Wade case. The Supreme Court's deciding to take a Roe v. Wade or a abortion case. Left is losing their minds over it. They're freaking out over Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. Now they're going to try to push them as much as they can, like they've done to John Roberts in the past, to try to uphold abortions. We're going to see what ends up happening. This would be a huge case if it went in favor of life, in favor of innocent life. And they're saying that it should come out June 2022 should be the final, I guess, opinion. By that time is when it will be decided, that case. So that will conclude this one. I greatly appreciate everyone for tuning in. As always, give me a like, share, or give me a Rumble share and subscribe. Let everybody know about the podcast. Drop the mic. And that will be it for this one. Everyone have a great weekend, and I will be back on Monday with some Federalist paper podcasts. Thank you.